Up to now, the stories I've shared with you were born from ancient pacts, from whispered legends and fears hidden in the folds of folklore. These were secrets guarded by communities, by families, by traditions. But there's another kind of secret, a more modern, colder, and perhaps more relentless type, the corporate secret. Large industries, in their incessant search for resources, dig deeper than any explorer, map territories no government knows, and sometimes they find things that weren't on geological maps, anomalies that defy science and common sense. And when that happens, the protocol isn't superstition or prayer. It's a confidentiality agreement, a mass dismissal, a fabricated bankruptcy, silence bought with money and fear. There are stories that are told and others that are buried, and there are those that are recorded, registered on magnetic tapes, hard drives, fragments of digital memory. They are time capsules that hold not only images, but also the fear, panic, and last words of those who recorded them. As an investigator, I've dealt with diaries, legends, witness accounts. But the material I bring today is different. It's rawer, more immediate. It's found footage, the recording of a disaster. Today, we're going to open a file that the Scotland Yard in the United Kingdom tried to keep closed for years. And we're going to watch together the last hours of a group of young filmmakers who, in search of a monster from the past, ended up becoming the main attraction of a new horror show. Good evening, or good morning. I am the Unseen Archivist. Today's story takes us to the small, rusty town of Ironbridge in Shropshire, a town built around an ironworks and haunted by the memory of a serial killer, Arthur de Steelman Finch. But our story isn't about him. It's about four young people who, decades later, tried to tell his story and ended up themselves becoming a legend of terror. We're going to analyze the tapes they left behind and try to understand what ancient evil still lives in the shadows of that steel factory. And before we press play, if you believe some stories should remain buried, leave your like to prepare for what we are about to unearth. And if you want exclusive access to these forbidden archives, subscribe to the Unseen Archivist channel and hit the bell. The truth, sometimes, can only be seen through the lenses of those who didn't survive to tell it. Let's start the projection. To understand what happened to the filmmakers, we first need to understand the legend that attracted them. Arthur de Steelman Finch. In the 80s, his name was the terror of Ironbridge. The town lived and breathed the steel from the Ironbridge works, and it was from there that Arthur Finch chose his victims. He wasn't an ordinary killer. Police reports from the time, which I obtained through a contact in British investigative journalism, describe his crimes as ritualistic. He didn't just kill. He created scenes of horror. The victims were found inside the ironworks itself, amidst the machinery, with strange symbols painted with blood and grease around them. For a year, he terrorized the town. And then, his reign of terror ended as violently as it began. On a night in 1989, a massive explosion occurred in one of the blast furnaces at the ironworks. An industrial accident, according to the official report. But the bodies of several of Finch's last victims were found in the rubble. And Arthur Finch himself, disappeared, presumed dead in the explosion he supposedly caused. The case was closed. The monster was dead. But the legends in the town told another story. They said that Finch wasn't the real evil. He was just the puppet. That the ironworks, built on ancient lands with a dark history, harbored a darkness, an entity that fed on violence and fear. And it was this entity that used Arthur Finch. And that, after the explosion, it didn't die. It merely went back to sleep, waiting. This is the legend that years later attracted a group of young independent filmmakers. They wanted to make the definitive documentary about Arthur Finch, and they succeeded, just not in the way they expected. The material I received is a compilation from a hard drive containing dozens of hours of recording. The first tapes introduce us to the Project Blackwood crew, the provisional name of the documentary. We have Liam, the director, young, full of energy, and with an ambition bordering on recklessness. He's the one narrating the production diary.
Right. Production diary. Day 1. We're in Cedar Hills. The town itself is a horror film set. Perfect. The crew is buzzing. We're going to make the film that puts us on the map.
We've got Maya, the researcher and screenwriter. Cautious, clever. She's the group's voice of reason.
Sam, I've spoken to a few of the older locals. They don't like talking about Stone. They speak of a shadow at the factory. I think there's more going on here than a simple serial killer case. We need to tread carefully.
And then there's Chris and Leo, the cameraman and the sound technician. Our eyes and ears. The tapes show the start of their investigation. Interviews with locals who refuse to talk. Shots of the rust-eaten streets of Cedar Hills. And the constant presence, on the horizon, of the abandoned steelworks. A mountain of silent metal. The interviews they do get are with people who were children during Stone's time, and their accounts are filled with a folkloric dread.
My dad worked at the mill. He used to say that, before the murders, things were already strange. Machines starting up on their own, screams in the service tunnels. Frank Stone didn't bring evil here. Evil was already here. He just opened the door.
Sam, the director, becomes fascinated by this supernatural angle. He decides the film needs more. It needs footage from inside the mill. Maya is against it, says it's dangerous, illegal. But Sam's ambition wins out.
Right then, just picture it. Us getting inside the steelworks at night. The very place where it all happened. It'll be the greatest opening sequence in the history of true crime. We get in, shoot for an hour or two, and we're out. What could possibly go wrong?
The next tape is from the night of the break-in. The footage is from Chris's camera, our first-person view of the descent into hell. They climb a fence and get into the steelworks complex. The place is a monster. A labyrinth of buildings, metal gantries, and gigantic furnaces that look like dormant mouths. Everything is covered in decades of rust and silence. This is incredible. Sam's voice whispers on the recording, ecstatic. This is terrifying, Maya replies. They enter the main foundry building. This is where it gets truly frightening. The silence inside is different. It's heavy and cold. Leo, the sound man, is the first to notice something's wrong.
Chris, I'm getting something on the headphones. A low frequency, a hum, and ... voices. Very faint, buried underneath the static.
They carry on exploring. The beams from their torches dance over the dead machinery. And then Chris, the cameraman, stops. Guys, look at that. The camera focuses on a wall. Drawn on it, in a mix of rust and something darker, is a symbol. A triple spiral. The same symbol my grandfather found in Goyas. The same one my great-aunt used to draw. My whole body went cold seeing it. The web of connections was bigger than I had thought. As they're filming the symbol, a metal door about 30 meters away from them slams shut. They spin around, startled. It's just the wind, says Sam, without conviction. There's no wind in here, Leo replies, his voice trembling. They start to back away slowly, and Chris's camera catches it for a split second. A tall, thin shadow moving quickly between two metal columns at the back of the warehouse. Did you see that? Chris shouts. See what? I didn't see anything. Let's go. Sam replies, already panicking. They start running back towards the exit. And that's when the plant's emergency lights, dead for decades, begin to flicker erratically, lighting the way with strobing flashes of red light. And with every flash, they see the shadow, getting closer each time. The following tapes are a found footage nightmare. The group gets separated in the panic and the darkness. What we see and hear are the final moments of each of them. recorded by their own cameras and microphones. Leo's tape is audio only. He's hidden himself in a small control room. We hear him whispering, terrified, and we hear the whispers from outside answering him. And then the sound of the door being torn from its hinges and Leo's final scream. End of tape. The footage from Maya's small camera shows her running through narrow corridors. She's crying, calling out for Sam. She finds a room full of safety mannequins used for training. She hides among them. The camera in her hand films the door to the room. A shadow passes by the door's window and stops. The handle begins to turn slowly. Maya stifles a scream. The camera falls to the floor, facing the ceiling. We hear the door open and a guttural sound. End of tape. The main tape, Chris's, is the longest and the most terrible. He and Sam manage to find each other again. They are being hunted. They don't know by what. The creature, the shadow, seems to be toying with them. They see it in reflections, as fleeting shapes. They hear its voice, mimicking Maya and Leo, trying to lure them into traps. The climax takes place in the heart of the steelworks, in front of the blast furnace, where it all ended in 1989. They're cornered.
What do you want? Who are you? Are you Frank Stone?
And then, for the first and only time, Chris's camera gets a clear glimpse of the creature. It's not a ghost. It's a physical figure, tall, covered in dark rags and bits of rusted metal, as if it has dressed itself in the steelworks. Its face is an old gas mask, and from within it, the pulsating red light of the blast furnace glows. It raises an arm, which ends not in a hand, but in a sharp metal claw. Chris screams and turns to run. The camera falls. The last image it records is the metal floor. We hear Sam scream, a sound of metal piercing flesh, and then silence. The recording continues for another minute, filming the floor. And then we see the creature's feet enter the frame. It stops over the camera, and the last thing we hear is a laugh made of static before the image cuts out. The tapes were found a month later by a group of vandals. The police confiscated them and buried the case as unsolved. The 4 filmmakers were added to the long list of Cedar Hill's missing people. My analysis leads me to a grim conclusion. Frank Stone wasn't the monster. He was the first actor, the first cast member for the entity that inhabits those steelworks. An entity that was perhaps born from the industrial fire, the violence, and the pain of the workers in that place, and which, after decades lying dormant, found in Sam and his crew the perfect cast for its new horror show. They weren't making a documentary. They were auditioning, and they all got the part. And that brings us to the final question. Do places hold memories? Or do they become personalities? A haunted house, a cursed forest, a blood-soaked steelworks? Could the energy of these places one day gain a consciousness of its own and start looking for new actors to reenact its favorite tragedies? Leave your theories in the comments. Was Frank Stone a man or a disguise? If this investigation has made you look at the abandoned places in your own town with new eyes, subscribe to the Utopico channel and hit the notification bell. Stories are everywhere. Most are just sleeping. We're here to wake them up. And our next investigation will bring us back to Brazil, to the town of Tres Trilhos in Santa Catarina, and to a luxury hotel with a dark history. A young journalist checks in to investigate reports of ghosts, only to discover that the hotel isn't just haunted, it's a prison. And the guests, both living and dead, are part of a terrible experiment that spans generations. Thank you for your courage in watching these tapes with me. Until next time,